Welcome back to Close Up, and here we go again in the House of Representatives. Impeachment is once again in the headlines. Congressional Republicans approving an impeachment inquiry for President Joe Biden this last week that will apparently look into the finances of the president and his immediate family. This morning we have Congresswoman Annie Kuster joining us in studio to talk about that inquiry and much, much more. Thank you for being here, Congresswoman.
Great to be with you, Adam. Thanks so much.
So obviously you have a perspective here from the Democratic side of the aisle, but what separates this impeachment inquiry from the two previous ones against President Trump, in your opinion?
Well, I think President Trump actually was accused of committing crimes, and there was evidence of that, and the evidence was laid out for the American people at the impeachment hearing, and the Senate was able to consider the actual evidence. In this case, there is no evidence that the president has committed any crimes whatsoever at all, and really I think it's more of a vindictive tit-for-tat measure. You've got Donald Trump with 91 indictments. We've got at least 4 different states considering court hearings in federal courts, and I think the Republicans are really scrambling. They seem to have been virtually ungovernable. You know, it took 15 rounds to get to Speaker Kevin McCarthy last January. Then in September they ditched him. Then it took another, I don't know how many weeks for them to get to their 5th choice, Speaker Johnson. And they have yet to produce or pass any meaningful legislation that they've set out to do. And frankly, every single time it's the Democrats. I'm the chair of the new Democrat coalition. We've come together to pass the legislation that needs to be done. So I'm proud of the work that we've done, but I think it's a total distraction. And frankly, it's really unfortunate that we've come to this.
And do you think this is the new normal, that voters should just expect now that Congress will investigate the president?
I hope not. I mean, look, if there's criminal conduct, you know, with President Trump, there's criminal conduct. And look at January 6th and all of the people who have literally gone to jail, the people that have gone to jail or are making you know, cooperating with authorities now on the aftermath of the 2020 election. Rudy Giuliani in court this week for lying about election officials and totally destroying their lives. If there's actual criminal conduct, yes, the impeachment is the appropriate process. But when there's no evidence whatsoever at all, I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
On the subject of President Biden, there's this write-in campaign going on in New Hampshire. Of course, he's not on the ballot over the dispute over the primary. Is it possible New Hampshire Democrats are doing a little bit of harm to themselves with certain voters who are wondering why be so subservient to the guy who's trying to destroy the state's cherished civic tradition?
Well, I'll tell you my view on this. We are resurrecting the state's cherished civic tradition, which is in 2028, I want us to be the first presidential primary in the nation, and we'll be first in the nation again. And so that's my goal. And what we're doing for the write-in campaign, by the way, reminding voters, show up Tuesday, January 23rd, write in Joe Biden. Luckily, it's very easy to spell, because we've got to kick this off with a really strong message to the country. Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy, and he cannot become the president of the United States again. And by doing that, we're demonstrating to the 2028 field, come to New Hampshire first. Last night, we had a wonderful Zoom with Cory Booker. I think we've got Governor Pritzker coming. My colleagues, Ro Khanna has helped us, and even Hakeem Jeffries came and was a fantastic speaker. I think Hakeem will be the next Speaker of the House. So we're working with all of these next generation Democrats to say, keep New Hampshire first, and let's get us right back on the ballot in 2028. So writeinbiden.com.
Moving to Capitol Hill, Congress just passed its version of the National Defense Authorization Act, and there's money in there for Ukraine, but not the big package that most people are talking about that would help them through the next year in their war against Russia. Would you you be open to this idea of a grand bargain, combining Ukraine aid with some kind of border security funding, as Senator James Lankford put it, perhaps a, quote, more non-compassionate approach that might limit asylum, for instance?
Well, look, obviously we want to see the details, but the president in his own package, when he sent it up to fund Ukraine, Israel, humanitarian assistance to Gaza, we've got to help the civilians in Gaza, and the president added border security, and I agree with that 100%. I think where it's sort of the devil in the details is changing immigration policy. What I want to see, let's get back to legal immigration, a path to citizenship, or an option with work visas so that people come here to work, but they have the intention of going back home. And look, we're at 2% unemployment, Adam. We need workers, and we have plenty of talented people who have come here for generations. My great-grandfather came to work in the mills, the Amoskeag Mills. I mean, let's bring people here to work. If they want to stay, to become citizens, let's have a legal path to citizenship. But right now, the chaos at the border is it's unsustainable.
You just got back from the climate summit in Dubai, and obviously there's a lot of work being done to curb CO2 emissions. I'm curious, what about accountability for the world's #1 emitter, if that is a word, China? Who is going to ensure that they hold to making their end of the deal in terms of bringing these emissions down?
Yeah, and what's extraordinary about this conference, the climate conference, 198 nations coming together. Our delegation was led by John Kerry, and he has an amazing ability to deal with all these countries. China and India at the table being a part of the plan, and the plan that was agreed to by consensus is to phase out fossil fuels. And so recognizing that we've got to end coal, reliance on coal, China agreeing to that over a period of time. And then what really I'm excited about is this investment in clean energy, whether it's wind or solar or hydro is something I've worked very hard on, geothermal, all of these options, and then technologies to capture carbon. Let's save our planet, create jobs, and make the world a better place. And I'm very optimistic after this agreement. I'm very excited.
Yeah, the Energy Transitions Commission estimates it's going to cost something on the order of $110 trillion worldwide from now until 2050 to achieve that clean energy transition. You know, Democrats have historically been the party of the working class. And I'm curious for your perspective on this. These costs have to fall on someone, and they probably are going to be disproportionately borne by consumers and the working class. So if you're in support of this transition, that government's going to force it, why should those people stay with you?
Well, let me tell you why. It was interesting because the Republicans in our delegation kept asking these other countries, how do you convince your constituency, and do you think this is going to be expensive? And they looked at us like, what are you talking about? People know about climate change, the floods, the wildfires, the droughts, the famine, and they know that we have to take action. And we can't afford to keep the old energy, the coal plants that are 35 years old that they can't even maintain. Let me tell you, Adam, what I'm very excited about. Eversource has just announced for next year a 35% rate decrease. That's never happened in my lifetime. And we're trying to cut costs. And the truth of the matter is, solar, the sun is free. Wind, the wind is free. What's been expensive for our society has been this reliance on shipping oil, shipping coal, shipping natural gas, these pipelines. Let's have a much more decentralized process. Electric vehicles, right now they look expensive, but in the long run, when you get your electric vehicle, you're not reliant upon the price of gas at the pump. Now, luckily, the price has come down. That's one of the costs that we've tried to lower. But the reality is, what if you didn't have to pay for gas anymore? So I'm just trying to look into the future, look ahead a little bit, so that we can alleviate these costs that are just crushing the middle class.
As we wrap up here, why are so many of your colleagues retiring? What's going on?
I think people have been really troubled by the the tone of the tenor of the debate. We have a new expression that are entertainment members. You know, you have somebody like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. She didn't come there to legislate. She didn't come there to solve problems. So, look, I'm working in the middle, trying to keep people, bring people together, get the job done, and I think it's worth continuing.
All right, Congresswoman Custer, thanks for joining us on
Great to be with you, Adam. Thanks so much.